Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Before I get into this video, I'd like to ask you all to please leave a like or comment on my video, consider subscribing to my channel, and if you dislike the content, please leave a comment. So for today's video, I'm actually going to be going over the test server. So the test server launched yesterday with the patch, and in order to join the patch server you need to do a 70 megabyte download to enter the test server. In order to leave the test server you're required to do a 70 meg download to leave the server. Now that is just the basics of what you need to know about the test server. However, I'm actually going to be going over a few negatives to the test server. The test server is a replica of the actual server we are on with a backdated save point. It is implemented with the construction of the new meta. Alright, so that's what you need to know about the save point. Now let's go through what they have actually done. They have nerfed rapid missile launches all the way to the lowest ranked of all the missile launches, that's in the medium and the large class most likely. They have buffed up the missile launches themselves, the long range missile launches, to a stronger level than the rapid missile launcher was before it got nerfed. And they double increased the power of torpedo launchers from when it was originally made. So altogether, this one little aspect of the game is where they really put in the impactomos of their nerfs. Now, besides that, the railguns and the cannons also received nerfs and not nerfs, received buffs. Now, everything in the game was buffed up and made stronger. However, the decrease in the rapid missile launches doesn't match the range of the weapon. Considering that the weapon is a mid-range weapon and the fact that it is meant to take a slightly larger amount of damage, to deal a slightly larger amount of damage, it has made it a little bit more difficult on the average player to complete that type of task. Now, when I say this here, I mean if you are going to go in and fight with it, it becomes a little bit tedious to use the rapid missile launchers. They are very underpowered. They're weaker than the missile launchers are at the moment. With the 15% reduction on them, they are weaker than current missile launchers. And that's not any type of bias on the whole situation. It's just the fact of how much they have taken off in terms of damage. Now, that's how badly they have impacted it. It's a poor decision. It wasn't the right thing to do. The fact that they were buffing everything meant that they shouldn't have interfered with the rapid missile launchers. Now, moving on from the rapid missile launchers, let's go through the rest of the situations. The railguns have received a much needed range extension on their short range railguns, giving them some range in combat where they aren't forced to face off against debuffs non-stop. So they actually now are a compatible piece of gear to use. The next thing on that list is the damage has been increased, which is now really not it's not such a good thing, it's not such a bad thing either. They were already very powerful when you got into close range, and now at the range that they have been given, they can do more damage at a slightly longer distance. They did too many buffs at one go and they have unbalanced the meta of the weapon. The weapon does a lot of damage on the closer range combat, and giving it a little bit of a boost in range was needed, but the increase in damage with the increase in range makes the weapon extremely dangerous to go up against. So it has overpowered railguns. Now, the next thing on the list was autocannons. The autocannons needed the buff in their firepower. It has helped them sufficiently, and it actually is a perfect match to what they needed. I don't know if it was an increase in range for them, but everything on them still seems exactly like it should be. It is perfect for the way that weapon works, and the increase in tracking speed is exactly something that was needed for that weapon. Now, as I was saying, the weapons that have been overpowered are as follows: the missile launcher, that's the long range, the torpedo launcher, which is the short range torpedoes. Honestly, the torpedo launcher they can do with half the buff they gave it, so reducing it by half of that amount will make it a fair gain to that weapon. Putting it up as far as they did wasn't a good idea. Then they have increased the damage and the range for railguns. The damage on the railguns, you can cut the buff by half and give it 10% increase over the 20% that it currently has it's a little bit too powerful for that type of a weapon. I know that the railguns are underpowered at current, but with the addition of range, it makes it very, very difficult to fight that particular weapon. So a little bit of a nerf and a resetting of those skills will be needed. Now, on the test server, the one thing that was severely impacting the way you tested weapons was the fact that you didn't have unlimited access. You have to grind up and play on the test server like you would in the regular server for several days in order to test whatever you want to test. And the PvE enemies have been buffed in their level of difficulty without buffing the reward that they drop when you defeat them. So, once more, a problematic situation has been made in terms of PvE. Increased difficulty in facing enemies, reduced income from the enemies. It's not a good combination. They need to think about increasing the reward drops from taking on enemies. They need to be, as I said, in retrospect to what you are defeating, you need to get a reward based on it. If you're beating a 5 million value Condor 2, you should be receiving 5 million ISK. Same way a PvP player will destroy 5 million Condor 2 and receive 5 million. It is only fair that the two aspects of the game are the same. PvP players can also play in PvE and get the same rewards. Now, with all of this being said, I know that it sounds like I am really hating on the test server, but I have no reason not to hate on the test server. Now, besides that, there were the introduction of the new ships. Unfortunately, the new ships are outside of my goal to be able to reach in terms of ISK. They're more expensive than the amount of ISK I have, and I do not intend to sit on a test server and grind for 7 days, losing out progress in actual gameplay. I would much rather come onto the real server and grind 100 encounters than sit on a test server and grind encounters for no particular reason. Along with the fact that I have to go and do everything that I would normally do just to get an advantage in any type of gameplay, meaning that I would have to have a team with me so that I can test out everything. And the fact that interdiction spheres have been thrown up on all the routes going through Nullsec, so there's no way for you to quickly test out how the impact of the new weapon changes are against Dead Space. So yeah, they've increased the difficulty of enemies. I'd say that a T6 is now equal to a T6 Dead Space. It is a bit too much of a buff to their power. They need to reduce it a little bit, and they need to increase the reward drastically. It is way too low on bounty from killing those pirates. Now, moving on to the next part of the faults within the test server, the interdiction spheres and the interdiction ships. The interdiction ships are very, very squashy. They don't have any resistance or basic skills to help them out. Actually, I think that is perfectly balanced for the function that they play. You can't use an interdiction ship alone to go and stop ships. You need to use it in a fleet. I think that was perfectly well made and constructed around that particular ship. The next problem on the side of interdiction ships and the covert ops, I haven't been able to touch any of the covert ops. I haven't been able to touch the interdiction ships. I'm taking this on first-hand accounts from other players who have enough ISK to play with them on the test server. The interdiction spheres using fuel is a little bit of fair reach to the whole situation. They are now equal to the MOA Guardians and so forth who use fuel to boost up their shields. Now, on this whole entire situation of the interdiction spheres, micro warp drives do not work within the interdiction sphere. So it is really unfair on the player who is playing the PvP format that he can't escape the interdiction sphere itself. Now, afterburners do work within the interdiction sphere, and the interdiction spheres aren't super huge, so you can get out of them really fast. However, an interdiction sphere mixed with warp disruptor will mean that you cannot warp away and you cannot get away, provided they web you within the interdiction sphere. Now, that is one of the negatives. You are still open to attack, and it does pull you out of autopilot. So, once more, another problem with the whole autopilot safety within the game. Now, all of this being said, these are some of the basic problems within the test server. The major problem is the fact that you have to grind for ISK within a server that isn't going to help you overall in terms of your progress. It is only there for you to test it out. They should have done a lot more, like giving you free access to all the ships. They should have given you one of each ship to test out for this whole purpose. They should have buffed up your tech level to maximum on the server so that you have an idea of where it's going. They should have given you unlimited access to the weapons. Basically, leave free weapons on the market non-stop. Make sure that it's permanently at 1,000 of each, and you can go in, jump onto those weapons, and have at it and see how it works in the game. Now, because of the lack of resources, some players have zero and would have to farm up a mission literally in this test server just to be able to progress to the next stage of the game. And it isn't going to work out for 90% of the players. It's going to result in a lot of players not being happy with the content they have to play. And I don't blame a lot of players for complaining about it, because it really is unfair to go into a test server where they're expecting you to give them results on what you can do in terms of gameplay, where you have to now play the game all over again just to be able to test out where they have changed the game. It's not fair, and in order to reset your skills still costs the same amount. You don't have an unlimited number of plex to reset skills. So it really wasn't made for everybody. It was just a reset point on the server given to everybody to use, when you could have just opened a test server where you log in once and you just have a single character on it who has full access to everything within the game. There's no need to do a tutorial or anything. You just go, jump in and play. But they chose to do it the hard way and make players suffer to get any results. It's going to have massive negative repercussions. Only massive PvP players will be able to do this here. The PvE players are going to suffer a lot with the whole situation, because PvE players generally spend a lot of ISK very, very quickly to keep their builds up and to replace builds that get destroyed. So there's a likely possibility that PvE players won't be testing out in the test server. I myself only have 100 million ISK, and that's not even enough to buy one weapon to which I need to test. So bad form on the side of Eve Echoes for making a poor test server. The test server should have had unlimited access. They should give us a notice patch that they have unlocked all ships, all those things within the test server, so that we may freely join and enjoy the experience of testing the weapons. Now all they've got to do is let you test everything and give you a tick box at the end of it, or a questionnaire on their Discord, and it will tell them where things have gone wrong. Example: the over buffing and the under buffing, the over nerfing and the over buffing of items. You can go and explain it to them, and they most probably will be able to bring it down. The interdiction spheres are perfect for what they are, from what I'm getting on feedback. They stop people from warping. They're capable of holding a ship for several seconds. Micro warp drives don't work within them. So yeah, that is the whole idea behind an interdiction sphere. Now, the negatives to an interdiction sphere is the fact that it affects AFK players, and it affects players who are in autopilot, so another negative to it. There is no way to instantly warp through interdiction sphere, and when you drop out of warp into an interdiction sphere, it seems like it instantly stops you. So it's not a fair matter to the game, and it needs to be worked on a little bit more to make it fair on the players who are traveling between large amounts of distance. So anybody who's AFK should have complete immunity on their autopilot. And with all of that, I am taking out another video after this explaining for you how to make sure that even when you are offline, your ship is protected using the right battle settings in your setting options. So I'll be doing a little battle setting video. I hope that you all enjoy it when it does come out. And this has been my take on the test server. Now, I know that I haven't covered a lot of the information very nicely. That's because I'm not jumping back on the test server. The test server is a waste of time. They made it a very poor version of a test server. It isn't a test server, it is a rehash of the real server with nerfs and buffs added into it. It is not for you to test, it is for you to play. And it's not something that we needed to do. We'd have to have extended amounts of ISK in order to do it. They'd have to buff ISK rewards by 1,000 times for us to be able to test out all those weapons. And the fact that we have to research and build ships and things like that there within that in order to get where we want to. We don't even have the time to build some of those ships because we don't have the research. and that will mean we'll need ISK to reskill to do all of those things. It's an endless process. It's going to take weeks and months to test all of their buffs if we were to test it properly. So yeah, very poor test server from Eve Echoes. They need to work on that whole idea of a test server and make it purely so that you can test out what is being done within the game, allowing you a selection of ships and allowing you to go out and test it for a good 6 to 7 hours. That's all you need for a proper test. The 7 day test period that they have is purely because they knew that there's a grind to test anything out in that server. They don't expect it for the regular player to be able to test in that server. It's not a fair game, fair means for all players, and that's all I have to say about it. Okay, let's see. Is there anything that I'm missing from the test server? Sorry about the silence. I'm just double checking this. I actually don't want to make notes on it because one of the takes in which I made this year, I was really ticked off with the way that the server was made. I felt that it was an insult to the players of the game. So I ended up lashing out quite badly towards Scope and NetEase in that video. So I've removed it and I scrapped all the notes that I made because I felt that this was insulting to the community. The test server literally makes you play and sacrifice 7 days of gameplay where your alliance, corporation, your player, your skills, everything could be developed even further due to them wanting to know whether they made a mistake or not. When they could have made it a 6 hour quick test for every player who can jump on, go through all of this quickly, and come off. Instead, they made it a long, hard, tedious process to test out whether they have made a mistake. And it means in order to get a good result, I have to talk to about 12 different people just to be able to get the understanding of what happened on this test server. Because even if I was on that server, I would only be one of the 12 people doing all of the testing to figure it out. One person literally had a fortunate situation where he had 1.8 billion left in his account on the day in question when they reset the server. He had 1.8 billion in his account due to him going to the market and selling a ton of gear. And that gear sold very quickly for him, and he only received it and had it for about an hour because he donated it to the corp in that time. So he basically got the absolute luck to have the best time for his ISK. If not, he would have been at 10 million ISK. And that is not a fair thing to have on the side of any player, because that means that one player can have 2 billion, another player could have 0, another player can have 100 million, and the figures aren't going fair within the test server. And as I was saying, it takes about 12 people to get a complete result and tell you exactly what's going on. Now, when it came to testing those interdiction ships, they only tested the weakest of them. Unfortunately, the amount of ISK needed to fit up the bigger ships, they didn't have enough and they couldn't buy enough fittings for it. So all of the results that I've been given are on a basic fitting. That means MK5 gear throughout the entire ship with the interdiction sphere and the interdiction ship. So yeah, poor fit up, poor usage, poor setting of that test server, and only 1 or 2 players actually have access to fuel at the moment. So they are the only players who were able to test out those interdiction spheres. And from what they were telling me, every single gate on your way into null sector has somebody testing out the interdiction sphere. So you basically get stopped every single time when you're heading into nullsec, and it's a waste of time in terms of using it. It doesn't deploy in high sec. In low sec, it does deploy in the middle of the sector, but that's just about it for the interdiction. And I'm hoping to see them change their whole idea on their test server. They're going to have to redo it. It isn't viable for 90% of the audience of the game. Nobody is going to sacrifice their entire month worth of gameplay just to go sit on a test server, which isn't going to help them at all in terms of gameplay, and come back to a game where they've lost all of their advantage, all of their ISK gains, all of their territory fighting. It was poorly done on the side of NetEase and Scope. They need to rethink it, as I'm saying once more. They need to build a better server. They need to put in better systems so that it's easier to test. They need to give you test dummies to fight against. They need to give you the option to change the level of anomalies in a sector. They need to make you choose where you are spawning within the game. And spawning you at your regular core base isn't going to help because of the factors that are now in play within this whole situation where you have to really play the game in a test server. And that's the thing, it is just a test, it isn't an actual gameplay, it isn't going to give you a massive ISK reward at the end of it, it's not going to give you a million SP, it's not going to give you an interdiction ship, it's not going to give you a full range of C-class weapons, and that's what you need on that server in order to test. And it's an unfair disadvantage to most players. It is a slap in the face to us for supporting them. It was a very, very bad decision. I think this is the third or fourth time that I have called them out for doing something bad. And that's about it. They've overbuffed all the weapons. They've over nerfed any weapon that they needed to nerf without thinking of the repercussions of buffing the other two within the class. The fact that they buffed all the weapons around it, the rapid should remain exactly where it was. It will still be nerfed way more than it should be nerfed, but it will be a fair enough state for that weapon to be in. It will be matched by its long range counterpart, so it will basically be choosing between rapid close range fire and long range slow fire. So there is your two options, and it's the exact same damage. That would be a fair option for the whole listing, although it is unfair on the player who is playing the closer range combat. The only thing that they're gaining is faster fire, so they might be able to bring down a shield a lot quicker than the long range attack. Okay, so that's going to be it for my rant and basically my disparaging of the test server. I hope that you all share my opinion and get straight onto the Eve Echoes Discord and fill in the suggestion box with what they need to do. They need to change up their test server and restart it so that we can actually pull off a proper test, and they need to announce it so that we know when they have changed the test server. Everybody jump on, do this here, because definitely we cannot allow them to nerf and buff and introduce new things to the game the way they are currently doing it with this current type of test server. It takes out too much from the game and it makes it too difficult for us to play. So all of us should get onto the Eve Echoes Discord, go straight to the suggestions and disparage this test server. Tell them to take it down and restart the test server with a better set of ways in order to test the weapons. We can't test and we can't see whether they have changed the game up in the right way. We can't tell whether things are buffed or nerfed correctly because of the amount of problems that are in the game. They need to give us a constant to test against, and they have overdone their buffing and nerfing within that entire module as far as I can tell. Even though things are being increased in power, the pirates have been increased in power as well, making it unfair on PvE players. PvP players now have even more advantage for AFK and offline players autopiloting. So all of this has to be taken into consideration, and I hope that you all complain alongside with the community. Thank you all for watching. Have a good day.